Today we got a 21-year marriage story. Let's get on with this. It's been a year and I'm still hurting. Okay, here is my story. My WF and I have been married happily for 21 years and have boys of 17 and 20. Last February I started to notice a difference in her. She was on her phone. Lost weight. Attention to our family was not normal. So I started to track her location. One day at work I noticed her location in a hotel room. I quickly left and tried to get there. But she left before I got there. When I confronted her, she told me she had met a guy on Tinder. And they only met in the parking lot. She felt we weren't connected anymore. And found attention from as I peeled back the layers of her story. And knowing my wife, I knew she didn't just meet some random guy in a hotel. A week went by and she admitted the guy was our son's high school principal. My wife is also the cheer coach at our high school. She said he started Snapchat her about 3 weeks prior. And that was the only time they met. She also said they started intercourse. But she made him stop, so I believe that. For about 2 or 3 weeks then I downloaded her Snapchat history. And found they had met prior to that in another hotel. She finally admitted they had intercourse. She was remorseful and ashamed and didn't want to tell me details. I of course wanted all the details. Because her version was a very PG version. I know people shouldn't know all the details, but my mind was racing and that's the way I'm wired. I found out the rest of the details about a month later and of course was worse than what she originally stated. She has cut off all contact with the and wants to wear our marriage. I am up and down. I do love her and don't want to break up my family. The problem is my mind races and I can't get images out of my head. She stated that the relationship was mostly online chat. And when it became physical she became very uncomfortable. I don't always believe what she tells me because of the trickle truth I got for the weeks following D-Day. She also stuck to her version that the second time they met D-Day she ended it with him in the hotel. After she stopped him. There are some things about this that makes it complicated. This guy is the principal of our school. So I have to see him at all the school sport functions. As my son plays football and my wife is the cheer coach. Prior to the affair my eldest son went through a legal issue. And the principal was very good to our family and backed my son. According to my wife, he used this to gain her trust and leverage some things for them to meet up. So I can't really talk about this to anyone because of fear my son finding out and it would be embarrassing to him. I confronted him once I found out and he took the blame, saying it was all him and he was very sorry. At this point our marriage is very good. We have reconnected and spend a lot of time together. Sex is great and my wife says she will do anything to prove how sorry she is and how much she loves me. I am on a roller coaster of emotions. Sometimes I love her and others I hate her for how she made me feel. We went to MC for a short while but that really didn't help. Someone tell me I will get over this. I do love my wife and want to forgive her. But I don't know if I can. Some notes about my story. I have not made her quit coaching. She offered but I wanted her to because of the legal issue. The issue was a girl that accused my son of a sexual incident was going to try out for cheer. And the only way to keep her off the team was for my wife being the coach. I have informed the OM's wife about the incident. She was not shocked but didn't really do anything about it. Says it wasn't the first time also. Believe me, I want to go to the school and get this guy fired, but I am afraid of this becoming public. I have threatened him many times, but we live in a small town, small school community, and I just don't want everyone knowing our business. My wife seems remorseful. I have access to her phone and any social media account, so I do believe she has not contacted him. I do not know how to get the total truth out of her if there is more other than leaving. Also to note, she did give me timelines of when they started talking. Late Jan. And D-Day was February 26th. She did tell me kind of what they chatted about in general, but there were thousands of messages over the month. I could see when they chatted but not the content from her Snapchat history. Comments you live in a small town. This is not a secret. That horse is already out of the barn. If you really want to find out what's been going on, you expose. I don't know what I would do in the same situation. But you could do something like the following if you really want to make your retirement out of it. You send a nice letter with a lawyer's letterhead on it to the school board, explaining very nicely that this principal has been having an affair with a student's mother. You don't have to say anything further than that, and explain that you will be filing a lawsuit and making the entire thing public. You can let them know that you haven't disclosed the name because you will do that after the private investigator has finished their work. Also explain that you will be looking for any documentation, prior indiscretions, and that the school board should make sure that all records are preserved. Send a copy to the newspaper. That is, if there is anything such as a local newspaper or online newspaper, they will probably tar and feather him and ride him out of town on a rail. First of all, I would bust the principal, contact his superiors and demand his termination. This has to be done. I find the behavior extremely unethical, and he must pay the price. Why should you have to carry the burden of what he did and suffer in silence every time you see him? Your wife should immediately resign her cheerleading coaching duties and cut all ties to the school until the principal is gone. As far as that is up to you. I am a BS and divorced my ex-wife many years ago. After her first affair, I felt dead inside. We struggled along for 6 more years until she cheated again and I ended it. You will never feel the same about your wife again, nor should you. What she did was reprehensible. Do not offer her so quickly. There is a lot of work your WW has to do. I now have a zero tolerance policy, but I am not in your shoes. After reading all these stories on Love TV, I have become less sympathetic to WSN. The betrayed spouse gets to carry the hurt forever. What a nice present the WS has left someone here she was supposed to deeply care about. Good luck to you. I hope you eventually find peace somewhere down the line. Story 2. Very long. Sorry, my husband and I have been married for 15 years. We dated 3 years prior to that. 2 kids, 1 preteen, 1 teen. The first 12 years of our marriage were, from my perspective, pretty good. I was happy and content. Felt safe in the marriage. I thought he was too. We did have our ups and downs, but I never thought of it being anything super serious. If we fought, we were usually okay with each other again in a day or two. Fights, mostly just heated arguments, would happen maybe once every 12 minutes, 3 months. Most of the time just fighting about things like money, decisions we needed to make that we didn't always agree on. And sex. The longer we were married, the less it happened. And I got upset about that sometimes. At the beginning of 2017, we started to have some pretty serious disagreements about a church he started going to, and wanted to take our kids to that I wasn't on board with. He didn't agree with my beliefs, nor I. It had never been an issue before, because we'd not attended church during our marriage. These were horrible fights, and they were happening multiple times a week. During the time we were fighting about these things, he started texting daily with the mother of my youngest son's best friend. I was friendly with her also and didn't think much of it initially. It was just sharing memes they found with each other and stuff like that. But then I noticed it was becoming an obsession with him. He would text her right in front of me, ignoring me when I was trying to talk to him. Everything she posted on Facebook, he would like it or comment on it. He suddenly wanted to be the one to take the kids to school in the morning so he could see her. I finally told him, after a few months, that the interaction and his constant need to be talking to her was making me uncomfortable, and he basically told me I was being jealous and controlling and I couldn't pick his friends. I endured it for a while longer, and then one day he was fretting around the house about her having surgery on an ovary and how he was so worried about her. I thought, why is she telling my husband about something like that? At this point the two of them were talking way more than she and I ever did. I decided to look at his texts. In their texts, I didn't find anything romantic or over the line into romantic territory, but I could sense from the way he talked to her that he was towing that line. They had discussions about all kinds of things, were checking in with each other daily, and talking to each other about me and mine and my husband's problems. That really felt like a betrayal. Basically this was an even if not romantic in nature. And I felt quite certain the feelings were there, at least for my husband. But he hadn't expressed them. I felt that if she picked up on any bait he left, it would go further. I confronted him and we had a huge blowout, and ended up deciding to do marriage counseling. It was around this time that my husband started saying he'd been unhappy in our marriage for years. News to me, most of our counseling sessions were not productive. Basically he just sat there and threw out everything he could think of that I'd done to him, trying to get the counselor to take his side. I mainly wanted to talk about the IA, but my husband got angry that I'd even call it that. The counselor also avoided talking much about the and instead dug further back into our history. Once the counselor tried to engage us in a fun little game about how well we knew each other. I enjoyed doing that so much, but as soon as we left, my husband was upset that we'd wasted time on that. All he'd wanted to do was sit and complain about me some more. I think after a while I stopped going to marriage counseling because I didn't think it was doing any good, but my husband kept seeing this counselor alone. He also continued his friendly relationship with my son's friend's mom, and didn't care at all that it made me miserable. He would in fact get mad at me for complaining about how it made me feel, saying that I make everything about me, and how I feel literally every time I would try to get vulnerable and express feelings to him or talk to him for a while about it. He would explode and get furious, saying I'm having a pity party. Over the next year he made another female friend that worked in the office where he did, and he talked about her all the time. They weren't texting like the other friend, because this one had a jealous husband, but they were together at work all day. He confided our problems to her and she confided hers to him. She was also having marital difficulty. She told him I was overreacting about his friendship with my son's best friend's mom. Of course he loved being around her whenever he could because she helped him validate his feelings. He also admitted to me he found her attractive. She's actually someone that I went to school with. So then, in addition to fighting about the one here, we had a new ear to fight about. He bought this new one little gift while we were on vacation in 2018, and in 2019. He emailed her every day while we were on vacation both years. He told me he had to confide in her about how unhappy we were because she was one of his best friends and he had no one else to lean on. He continued to insist they were just friends the entire time these IA were happening. We drifted more and more apart, almost no sex. He was cold and disconnected with me more often than not. Seemed annoyed with everything I did. Stopped laughing at my jokes, etc. I was desperately trying to figure out how to save our marriage, and it just seemed that he got more and more distant from me. Finally, in December of 2018, I told him we needed to separate for a while, and he was happy to go. We talked about it before, but both knew it just had to happen. Being around each other was too stressful. I'd hoped the time apart would be good for us, that he could come back home in 6 months and maybe we'd be ready to reconnect. We had vacations planned for the next year and decided to go on those together as a family despite the separation. I told him I didn't want us to see other people during the separation, and he agreed to that. Throughout 2019 we still saw each other weekly when the kids would be picked up to go see him, and we talked every day on the phone. He would still tell me I love you when he hangs up the phone. Sometimes we'd hug, but other than that, no physical closeness. We had a good time on vacations. We also did other things together as a family. I had hope for us, but after the 6 months I asked him to come home, and he said no because nothing has really changed. He wasn't ready. I was upset but decided to give it another 6 months. Again got the nothing has really changed. Along with the I love you. But not in love with you and it feels like we're just friends speech. I was devastated by that and nearly divorced him then. Because we've been separated a year and I was so ready to try again. This year he's been more distant than ever. He didn't want to go on vacations with us anymore. Didn't say he wouldn't, just wouldn't commit to doing it, didn't want to do family outings. Stopped hugging me almost altogether. However, he did still call me nightly. But I could tell he was less with our family than he'd ever been. I hung on to hope, made sure the house was clean when he came over. Fixed myself up when he came over, made sure I was friendly and listened to him. Tried to be everything I could so he'd want to try again. But it was like nothing worked. D-Day. August 17th. 2020. A few weeks ago he shows up. Unannounced. While the kids are at school, comes in. And says he has something to tell me. And it will be hard to hear. I braced myself. I figured he either wanted a divorce or was going to admit to a physical affair. He told me he'd been having an affair. Emotional turned physical. That the woman was also married and had told her husband a few days ago that it had happened over the last few years and he'd never intended it. That they'd just gotten closer and it all just happened. Says he loves her and she loves him. I'm just numb. I had suspected it, but this was confirmation. He won't say who she is. Says this woman has a lot more to lose than I have to gain if I knew. But I'm not an idiot and know it's the woman from work. There was a weird blonde hair on his jacket that I noticed last October. She has blonde hair. Lots of things are adding up. He also won't give any details about how long it's been going on. He says this woman has reluctantly agreed to marital counseling with her husband, and that he's open to doing counseling with me again if I want to. But he doesn't really sound like he wants to. I get to love you but not in love with you speech again. And he says it may be possible he could be in love with me again if we did counseling. He then gets back on his high horse, talking about how I've made him unhappy in the marriage. And if we do counseling we're going to have to dig into my issues and not just his infidelity. And that he and his appeal both feel that an affair is nothing compared to what they've both been put through by their spouses. Again, it's news to me. He was so unhappy all those years. So I told him to duck off and he left. I called a lawyer. Put all his crap that was left here outside on the basement porch. I had the papers drawn up by the lawyer. I was ready to divorce him. When he called I refused to talk to him about anything except the kids. He kept trying to be friendly on the phone though I had unanswered questions. And finally broke down after a week of little contact and started asking him all kinds of things. He would not say he regretted the affair. He says I regret hurting you. But in regard to the affair he says I don't know what I'd have done differently with that. And maintains he loves her and he doesn't know if when those feelings will ever go away. After a few days of this I ended up deciding I'd take him up on the counseling. But it had to be a different counselor than the one we'd seen before. Part of me wants to just go on and divorce him and part of me wants to go do this and check off all the boxes first. We've been together 18 years, 15 of which we're happy. And we have 2 kids. Divorce is final. And I decided I don't need to make the decision until my emotions have calmed down. And we've at least gotten in front of a counselor again. That said, I have basically no hope. It's obvious he is as checked out as checkout can be with our relationship. And I don't think he does either. He says now he doesn't think his romantic feelings for me will come back. And that he doesn't think his romantic feelings for her will ever go away. He says he hates to leave the family. Hates to think of no more vacations. No more of the 4 of us being together. Again tells me he thinks I'm beautiful. And it had nothing to do with anything about me or anything being wrong with me, etc. That it's just a thing that happened. That he needed a closeness and connection and he couldn't get it from me anymore. And the 2 of them have that. He says he is not sleeping with her right now since she's trying to work on things with her husband. But that she has called him crying to tell him how bad things are going with her husband. I'm not sure, I'm convinced he's not still seeing her, but he doesn't live at home, so I wouldn't know. I told him she's stringing you along, keeping you on the line. She doesn't want you to lose hope, don't be stupid, etc. He didn't seem to like to hear that. Anyway, I don't know what's happening now. It's all limbo again. I'm not sure we're doing counseling or not. He did say he'd go, he's the one who offered it initially. I'm not sure I want to, I'm not sure there's any point, since he has no remorse nor much empathy for me, and seems to be clinging to his idea that he's madly in love with this woman. If he's upset about anything, I think it's just that she's working on things with her age. I did make myself an appointment with the doc to get some anxiety meds. I'm a train wreck right now, and a counseling appointment for myself for next week. I'm trying to take care of myself the best I can. I feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck. And it's like every day, how am I going to feel today? The mind movies are absolutely killing me and cause me to break down into sobs. Daily, all I'm able to do is what I need to do for my boys and myself. Daily, apart from that, I just want to curl into a ball and cry. The counselor he and I used to see referred him to a psychologist. He told me he knows he has boundary issues and that he's working on them, that he wants to make sure he doesn't cheat in the future, so he is at least aware that he's done something wrong. He doesn't blame me for the affair. He says he knows it was his decision, and that I didn't force him to behave in that way, but he does continually bring up my part in the downfall of our marriage, telling me how our entire marriage from his perspective has been about my own wants and desires. He bases this off of some things like me picking vacations, picking houses we lived in, basically saying no to things he wanted to, like to rejoin the army when I had 2 toddlers at home, wanting up and moved to Virginia right after we bought a house and had got settled in. Says I'm faster to help my family with things than I am him. From my perspective, I'm the breadwinner, and had been for the last 6 years. I paid to put him through real estate school, then EMT school, built us up to a 6-figure income with my business so he could stop being an over-the-road truck driver, allowing him to take a year off from working at anything. Helped his dad buy a house, offered to fix up our basement so his dad and mom could move down there while she was ailing. Let him shop to his heart's content, buying whatever he wanted when our income got a lot higher. But it's all been about my own wants and desires. Apparently because I had opinions that differed from his at times. Not saying vacations and houses aren't big issues to differ on, but I don't see how he can say all of that is as bad as an affair. He thinks it is. He says if our marriage fails, it won't be because of his affair. It will be because we've been in an unhealthy relationship for a long time. Side note, he told me he called up his first EP, the mother of my son's friend, to tell her he'd had an affair. I have no idea why he did that. He then told his appeal about that phone call, and she got mad at him for calling his first EP, asking him why is it relevant to tell her anything. Clearly jealous. I just think it's funny, I guess now. Maybe she has an idea what sort of man she's trying to win for herself. Also, I have no idea why my husband told me about these exchanges. Comments: sorry to see you here, and even more sorry that this turd dragged you through this for so long. Your marriage failed because he failed at marriage. Did you overlook red flags? Sure, but we all did at some point during our marriages. Myself more than once. Counseling is a waste of time and money at this point. The only counseling you should worry about is for the kids and yourself. Don't let it drag out any more than it already has. You don't want to give him time to leverage anything against you. I agree that counseling is a waste right now. You should move forward with the divorce. I also think you should contact the OBS. I find it says that he spilled everything so suddenly to you. I think he did it in an attempt to keep you from speaking to the OBS yourself. I know it seems counterproductive to talk to the OBS. It will either push the other couple to divorce. Let him know they are still in contact. It might not. It might just have her throw your husband under the bus and wake him up to how relevant he is. My guess is that OBS knows way more than you do about the affair. And that getting the information might be good for you. Him knowing that they are in contact would be very good for him. Besides, it's the right thing to do. It's obvious he thinks he is fighting for his marriage. Meanwhile, his WWE is stringing your husband along. Do not tell your WH you are doing this. Just do it. Hope you guys learned something new from these ones. Sometimes life is a pain and you just have to keep moving forward. What you think, comment down below. Sub and bell, and the next story are coming soon.